The aliens had underestimated one thing: humans don't back down. The skies above Earth darkened as the alien fleet descended. They arrived not as visitors but conquerors, their massive ships blotting out the sun. In an instant, they unleashed their advanced weaponry, sending shockwaves through the cities. Entire populations were forced to flee, the streets filled with panic and despair. The invasion was not a sudden assault, it was a meticulously planned conquest. The aliens' technology outmatched anything humanity had ever seen. Their weapons turned cities into rubble, their ships rendered human military forces powerless, and their soldiers, monstrous and intelligent, crushed any resistance with ease. For days, Earth's forces tried to mount a defense, but the aliens were always one step ahead. Their advanced shields rendered humanity's weapons useless, and their ability to anticipate every move left no room for surprise. Governments fell, and the military was in disarray. Humanity's pride, their cities, their technology, their power, seemed helpless before this overwhelming force. In one of the first major cities to fall, a small group of civilians stood on a rooftop, watching the destruction unfold. They were just ordinary people, no generals or soldiers in their midst, just people caught in a world that was suddenly collapsing. Among them were a mechanic, a teacher, and a mother with her child. They had no grand strategy, no advanced weaponry, just their wits and a desperate need to survive. As the alien ships hovered above them, their massive guns aimed at the city center, the group watched in horror. They knew that death was inevitable, but they also knew they couldn't just stand there and wait. The mechanic, a quiet man with a knack for tinkering, looked at the others with a determined glint in his eyes. "There's gotta be something we can do," he muttered under his breath. The teacher, ever the optimist despite the odds, nodded slowly. "We're not the military, but we're not helpless either." The mother clutched her child tightly, her voice trembling. "What can we do? They're invincible." A soft smile crossed the mechanic's face. "They may think they are, but they've never had to deal with humans before. We're not like them. We don't give up." He wasn't sure if he truly believed those words yet, but the determination in his voice made the others pause. They weren't soldiers or scientists. They were just people who loved their families, who cherished their world. And they weren't about to let it go without a fight. As the first explosion rocked the ground below, the mother stood, her face pale but resolute. "We have to try." The mechanic nodded. "We're going to make them regret underestimating us." In the midst of the chaos, the group moved through the ruins of the city, avoiding alien patrols, finding shelter where they could, and thinking quickly about how to fight back. They didn't have the resources or the firepower of an army, but they had something the aliens couldn't have prepared for: human resilience. And that's when they discovered the first flaw in the alien invasion. The aliens, with all their advanced technology, had failed to consider one thing: humans were unpredictable. As the mechanic worked frantically with scraps of metal, wires, and broken tech, he rigged a crude but effective device that sent a signal that temporarily disabled the alien ships hovering above. It wasn't much, but it was enough to cause a brief disruption. The aliens noticed immediately. They adjusted their shields, recalibrated their weapons, and issued orders for the attack to resume. But something had shifted. For the first time, humanity had given them a problem they hadn't anticipated. A problem they couldn't solve in an instant. The aliens, who had come to Earth with the arrogance of a race that had conquered countless worlds, were not used to being challenged. They were accustomed to dominance. But as the disrupted signals echoed in their ship systems, a sense of doubt crept into their minds. Perhaps, for the first time, they had underestimated their enemy. The group of civilians, just a mechanic, a teacher, and a mother, had done something no military force had been able to: they had fought back. They had found a crack in the aliens' seemingly impenetrable armor. And with that small, unexpected victory, the resistance was born. The signal that disrupted the alien fleet wasn't much, but it had been enough. Enough to give the survivors hope. The mechanics' quick thinking with the crude device hadn't just caused a brief disruption in the alien systems, it had ignited something deeper. As word spread across the city, the survivors realized something that hadn't seemed possible just hours before: they could fight back. And if they could, so could others. Within days, the group of civilians, led by the mechanic, the teacher, and the mother, had become a small but growing resistance cell. They were far from soldiers, but they were resourceful. The teacher, who once stood in front of a classroom filled with students, now taught others the skills they would need to survive. The mother, whose heart had once been focused only on caring for her child, became the protector of the group, rallying those who had lost everything to the invaders. The mechanic continued to lead the effort to create makeshift weapons and devices from scrap parts. Together, they became the heart of something larger, a movement that spread through the city like wildfire. Across the globe, other pockets of resistance began to form, just like theirs. Humans had a strange way of fighting back, especially when pushed to their limits. They couldn't match the alien technology, but they could learn to exploit their enemies' weaknesses. The aliens, for all their advanced weaponry, had never anticipated the sheer ingenuity of humanity. They weren't used to fighting beings who refused to stay down, who adapted faster than the invaders could keep up. However, it wasn't just their cleverness that made the humans formidable, it was their unity. The mechanics, teachers, doctors, farmers, and factory workers, ordinary people, had all come together. They shared a common goal: to protect their homes, their families, their world. But there was more than that. They had a drive that the aliens hadn't counted on, something the invaders couldn't fully understand: the unyielding spirit of a species fighting for survival. The aliens, still stunned by the brief failure of their invasion, regrouped. They had suffered their first real setback, and that alone made them reconsider their approach. The alien commanders, however, were too proud to acknowledge a vulnerability. They dismissed the disruption of their fleet as a glitch, an anomaly, and returned to their initial strategy. They would crush humanity's resistance swiftly and decisively, their arrogance clouding their judgment. Meanwhile, the resistance grew stronger. One of their greatest successes came when the mechanic, using nothing but spare parts and whatever he could salvage from the wreckage of fallen alien ships, created an EMP device. It wasn't large, but it was powerful enough to take down small enemy drones and disrupt the communications of alien patrols. The resistance now had an edge. They weren't just reacting to the invasion, they were actively fighting back. The turning point came when the group discovered something both terrifying and enlightening. The aliens had a central command structure, a massive mothership orbiting above Earth, which controlled the fleet's movements. It was heavily guarded, but its weak point was its communication system. If they could infiltrate and disable it, they could disrupt the entire alien force. It was a long shot, but it was their best chance at striking a real blow. However, the resistance was still small, its forces untrained. They needed to recruit more people, ordinary people willing to risk everything for the survival of humanity. And they needed to act quickly, before the aliens adapted fully and crushed their efforts. A call went out across the city: we fight together, or we fall alone. The response was immediate. People who had been hiding, people who had lost everything, joined the cause. A grandmother with a passion for gardening showed up with handmade explosives. A young man, barely out of high school, had learned how to hack computers and used his skills to help the group infiltrate alien communication networks. A father who had lost his wife in the first wave of attacks crafted weapons from the debris of fallen alien drones. Each new recruit brought with them something different. Some brought weapons. Some brought knowledge. Some brought strength of will. Together, they formed the core of a resistance army. But the clock was ticking. The aliens were beginning to regroup. Their patience was wearing thin, and they were determined to wipe out every trace of human resistance. They had underestimated humans once before, but now, they wouldn't make the same mistake again. Humanity was on the verge of its greatest test. Would they survive? Or would the aliens finally stamp out the last vestiges of hope? The mechanic, standing atop a roof overlooking the city, gazed at the darkened sky. The alien mothership loomed overhead, casting a long shadow across the ruins. He turned to the teacher, who had become his confidant in these trying times. "We can't afford to lose," he said softly, more to himself than anyone else. "No," the teacher replied, her voice resolute. "We won't." The battle for Earth was far from over. But the resistance was no longer just a group of desperate civilians. It was humanity's last, best hope. And they were ready to take the fight to the heart of the alien invaders. The sun had barely risen when the resistance gathered in their hidden base, a former warehouse on the outskirts of the city. The air inside was thick with anticipation as the members of the group prepared for what could be the most dangerous mission they'd ever attempted. The goal was clear: infiltrate the alien mothership, cripple its central command, and disrupt the alien fleet's ability to coordinate their attacks on Earth. The mechanic, standing over a makeshift blueprint of the mothership's structure, pointed to the section marked with a bold X. "This is where we'll hit them," he said, his voice steady, despite the weight of the task ahead. "It's the communications center. If we can disable it, we disrupt their whole operation. No more coordinated attacks. We'll cripple their ability to respond." The resistance had been working tirelessly for days, gathering intel and preparing for this moment. They had learned that the aliens' technology was vastly superior, but it had a major flaw: it was dependent on a centralized communication hub. Without it, their entire fleet would be thrown into chaos. "We're going in as quietly as possible," the mechanic continued. "We've got to disable their communication grid before they even know we're here." The teacher, who had taken on the role of strategist, nodded. "We have the advantage of surprise. The alien fleet's focus has shifted to ground operations. They won't expect us to strike from the inside." Among the team was a hacker, a young man who had grown up tinkering with computers in his spare time. His skills would be crucial in disabling the aliens' communication network once they were inside. "We've got one shot at this," the hacker said, his eyes narrowing as he looked over the map. "Once we're in their system, we've got to move fast. They'll notice soon enough if we don't." The plan was set. A small group of volunteers would infiltrate the mothership under the cover of darkness, using the stolen alien tech to mask their presence. The rest of the team would provide support, creating distractions and ensuring that the mothership's attention remained elsewhere. The team's nerves were frayed, but there was no turning back. They knew this was their best chance to disrupt the alien invasion. As the team silently moved toward the mothership, it loomed ahead of them like a giant, metallic beast in the night sky. It was an intimidating sight, but the resistance had come too far to be deterred now. The once feared alien invaders were no longer an insurmountable force. Humanity was fighting back, and for the first time, the aliens were the ones caught off guard. The first part of the mission was deceptively simple. Using the device the mechanic had crafted, a combination of alien technology and human ingenuity, the team was able to avoid detection as they neared the mothership's docking area. They had practiced this moment for days, and now it was finally here. Inside the mothership, the corridors were eerily quiet, the lights dim and flickering. The team crept through the hallways, their hearts pounding in their chests, the sound of their footsteps muffled by the thick metal floors. The hacker led the way, his hands moving quickly as he accessed an alien terminal. "We've got a clear path for now," he whispered, his eyes darting around nervously. "But we need to move fast." Their first obstacle came sooner than expected. A security patrol of alien soldiers appeared in the hallway, moving swiftly toward them. For a moment, it seemed like they were done for. But the mother, the one who had become the group's protector, had a plan. "Now," she hissed, and the team scattered, each of them hiding in the shadows. She had a set of explosives designed to create just enough of a diversion to confuse the patrol long enough for them to slip past. With a quiet but powerful pop, the explosives went off, sending sparks and loud crackling sounds down the corridor. The patrol, momentarily distracted, stopped to investigate the noise. The team, hearts racing, took their opportunity to move undetected past them. "Close," muttered the teacher, wiping the sweat from her brow. "Too close." But they couldn't stop now. They had to keep pushing forward. As they neared the communications room, the tension escalated. The path was getting narrower, and the air felt thicker. The hacker worked fast, bypassing alien security systems one by one, but the closer they got to their destination, the more they began to feel the weight of their mission. One wrong move, and they could all be dead. Finally, they reached the communications room. The door was heavily secured, but with the help of the mechanic's expertise, they managed to force it open. The room inside was unlike anything they'd ever seen. The walls were lined with shimmering, alien consoles, each one glowing with light that pulsed rhythmically. The sheer scale of the technology was overwhelming, but the mission was clear: disable the communications network. The hacker plugged his device into the nearest terminal and began typing furiously. "This is it," he muttered. "If I can just crack this." A sudden alarm blared throughout the ship. The plan had been compromised. "We've been spotted," shouted the mechanic, his eyes wide with panic. The alien forces would be on them in seconds. The team had to make a choice: complete the mission and risk being trapped, or abort and live to fight another day. "Finish the job," shouted the teacher. "We're not turning back now." The hacker hit one final key, and the alien consoles flickered out. The communications grid was down. The aliens' ability to coordinate had been severed, and for the first time, humanity had the upper hand. But their escape was far from easy. The team was forced to fight their way out, battling alien soldiers in tight corridors. The mission was successful, but at a terrible cost. By the time they reached the escape route, their numbers had dwindled. But the resistance had struck a decisive blow. The aliens, once so sure of their dominance, were now on the defensive. The humans had shown them something they hadn't expected: when pushed to the edge, humanity would do whatever it took to survive. As the resistance members made their escape from the mothership's core, the sound of alarms blared through the corridors. The chaos they'd unleashed was only just beginning to unfold. They had succeeded in their mission, but the victory came at a steep price. The alien forces were now aware of their presence. Every corner of the ship seemed to pulse with danger. The teacher, who had played the role of strategist, looked over the group with urgency. Their route to the escape pods had been compromised. The explosion that had gone off earlier had alerted the entire ship to their presence. Now, they were being hunted. "We need to move, now," she shouted, urging the others forward. Despite the success of their mission, they weren't out of danger yet. The aliens were formidable enemies, and the resistance had only a small window of time before they were overrun. There was no turning back. The team ran, hearts pounding, through the dimly lit hallways of the alien vessel. The silence between their footfalls was eerie, but it was punctuated by the distant hum of alien weaponry charging. Every now and then, the screeching sound of alien creatures echoing from unseen corners sent waves of dread through their bodies. The first wave of attackers came quickly. Alien soldiers, their eyes glowing with an unnatural intensity, emerged from the shadows, their weapons raised. The team opened fire, but the weapons they had scavenged from the alien technology were no match for the sheer strength of the soldiers' advanced weaponry. The teacher, ever the calm presence under pressure, yelled out, "Fall back. Get to the escape pods." The mechanic, struggling to reload his weapon as an alien soldier closed in, fired a shot that took down one of the attackers. He was panting, his hands trembling, but he knew this was their only chance. "Move. Move," he urged. The mother, who had been providing protection for the others, was the last to retreat, ensuring that no one was left behind. But as she turned to run, an alien soldier's weapon fired a shot that grazed her arm. The wound was not fatal, but the pain was enough to slow her down. The teacher turned, seeing the mother stagger. "Get her," she shouted, and 2 members of the team rushed to help. But it was clear, time was running out. Every step they took seemed to echo through the ship, reminding them that the enemy was always close behind. The alien soldiers were relentless, their attacks growing fiercer with each passing moment. The once proud resistance fighters had become prey, and they knew that their only hope was to reach the escape pods before the aliens could trap them. The fight for survival was brutal. They reached the escape pods, but the doors didn't open automatically. The team had to force their way in, using whatever tools and weapons they had left to break open the hatch. The clock was ticking, alien soldiers were mere feet away now, their weapons firing with deadly precision. "Almost there," the hacker said, his voice strained as he worked quickly on the pod's manual release system. His hands flew over the controls, but the pressure of the situation made each second feel like an eternity. "We don't have much time," the teacher snapped, eyes darting around, watching for any sign of the approaching enemy. Finally, with a hiss and a loud bang, the hatch to the escape pod opened. They piled inside, not caring who sat where, their faces painted with exhaustion, fear, and the grim determination that had gotten them this far. As they launched into space, the bright lights of the mothership slowly faded into the distance. They were safe, for now. But the journey had taken its toll. The mother, wounded in the escape, was tending to her arm, but the fear in her eyes was undeniable. She knew what they had faced, and what they still might face. "We did it," she said quietly, her voice hoarse. "We stopped them." But as the group settled in, their relief was short-lived. The alien fleet had been thrown into chaos, but it was clear the war wasn't over. The aliens had more resources, more power, and their retaliation would be swift. Still, the team had done the impossible. They had breached the heart of the enemy and delivered a blow that had shaken the very foundation of the alien command. The battle within the mothership was over, but the war was far from won. The tension continued to build as the resistance tried to regroup, their bodies battered but their spirits unbroken. They knew that what they had done was just the beginning. They'd struck a mighty blow against an invincible enemy, but it had cost them. The team had lost members along the way, some to the alien forces, others to the risks they had taken. But each loss had reinforced their resolve. They couldn't afford to stop now. Their victory on the mothership had given humanity a glimmer of hope. But as they moved forward, they knew they'd have to face even greater dangers in the coming days. "Whatever comes next," the teacher said, her voice firm, "we do it together. We fight, and we win. We can't afford to lose now." And with that, they steeled themselves for the next challenge. The aliens may have underestimated them before, but they wouldn't make that mistake again. The escape pod floated silently through the vastness of space, the stars outside twinkling like distant promises of hope. But inside, the mood was somber. The group was battered, physically and emotionally drained. Their victory on the mothership had been hard-won, but the cost was apparent. They had made it out alive, but how long would they be able to hold on? How long could they run before the aliens caught up to them? The teacher, ever the tactician, stared at the flickering lights of the pod's control panel, her thoughts racing. They had succeeded in their mission, but they had no illusions about the greater war that awaited them. The alien fleet would be on their trail soon enough, and they needed a plan. But there was one problem they hadn't considered: they were running low on resources, and their numbers were dwindling. The mechanic was the first to break the silence. "We need to contact Earth. Let them know what we've found. We can't do this alone." "We don't have enough time," the teacher replied quietly. "If we send a signal, the aliens will track it. We have to remain undetected." Then what do we do? The hacker asked, his voice tinged with desperation. We can't just hide. We have to take the fight to them. The mother, sitting quietly with her wound bandaged, looked up. Maybe we don't have to do it alone. Everyone turned to her. She had been a quiet presence during their journey, but now her words carried weight. She wasn't just a mother, she had been someone with deep connections in the resistance movement. The team had never really discussed the full scope of her past, but now it was clear there was more to her than met the eye. We might have someone on the inside, she said slowly, a look of determination in her eyes. Someone who can help. The teacher frowned. Who? She hesitated before speaking, the weight of her revelation heavy in the air. An alien, a former officer. They're not like the others. They disagree with the leadership of their species. They've been working with us from the inside for months now. The room fell silent. The implications of her words were enormous. A former enemy, one of the very aliens they had been fighting against, was now willing to help them? The idea was almost unfathomable. But why? Why would they betray their own kind? The mechanic asked, his voice filled with suspicion. The mother met his gaze. Because they've seen the truth. The aliens are not the unified force we thought they were. There are factions within their ranks, and some of them are disgusted by what they've been ordered to do. The team exchanged uncertain glances. Could they trust her? Could they trust an alien who had turned against their own people? The questions hung in the air like a thick fog, but the reality of their situation was undeniable. They had to take risks if they were going to survive. We don't have much of a choice, the teacher said after a moment. If we want to win this war, we need all the help we can get. We'll take the risk. The decision was made. The mother communicated with the former alien officer, arranging a secret meeting at a neutral location on a nearby asteroid. It was a dangerous gamble, one that could easily end in betrayal, but they had no other options. Hours later, they arrived at the designated spot. The asteroid was desolate, its surface scarred by meteor impacts. The only sign of life was the faint glow of an encrypted signal indicating the presence of the alien officer. The team disembarked cautiously, weapons drawn, but ready to listen. They approached the meeting point with caution, scanning the area for any signs of danger. The tension in the air was palpable. Then, out of the shadows, a figure emerged, a tall, humanoid figure, cloaked in a dark, flowing robe. Its face was obscured, but the voice that came from beneath the hood was unmistakable. "You've come," the alien said, its voice deep and resonant. "I was beginning to think you wouldn't." The teacher stepped forward, her heart pounding in her chest. "Are you the one they call Cyrus?" The alien nodded slowly. "I was once a commander of the forces that attacked your world. But I have seen the truth. The war your species faces is not a fight for survival, it is a fight for something much greater. A fight for freedom." The resistance members exchanged uncertain glances, but the teacher held her ground. "Why help us?" Cyrus's eyes glowed faintly beneath his hood, betraying a deep sadness. "Because your survival means more than just defeating my people. It means ending a cycle of oppression that has lasted for eons. The leadership of my species must be stopped. And I can help you do it." As Cyrus explained his plan, the resistance members listened intently. He offered them valuable intelligence, strategic weaknesses in the alien fleet, the locations of key command centers, and the identity of the leaders they needed to target. His knowledge was invaluable, and though they were wary, the group recognized that they had little choice but to trust him. But even as the tension began to ease, one thought lingered in the back of their minds: was Cyrus truly on their side? Or was this a trap designed to lull them into a false sense of security? Despite their doubts, they had no choice but to move forward with Cyrus's plan. The resistance members were once again united by a shared goal: to defeat the alien invaders and reclaim their world. The presence of this unexpected ally gave them hope, but they knew the road ahead would be perilous. As they prepared for the next phase of their mission, the team was reminded that even in the darkest of times, humanity's strength lies not only in their ability to fight, but in their ability to unite, even with the most unlikely of allies. The tension in the command room was unbearable. The map of the alien fleet displayed on the screen was a sea of red, marking the locations of enemy ships, bases, and vital command centers. The Resistance had been preparing for this moment for weeks, ever since they had received the crucial intelligence from Cyrus, the alien officer who had defected. They had the element of surprise on their side, but the odds were still overwhelmingly stacked against them. The teacher stood at the front of the room, staring at the map, her mind working through the plan they had carefully crafted. She had seen the fear in the eyes of the others, but she knew this was their only chance. There could be no turning back now. "We've come this far," she said, her voice steady but filled with an urgency that echoed through the room. "We have the locations of their leadership. The alien fleet is concentrated in these 3 sectors. If we hit them all at once, we can take out their command structure. We cut off the head, and the body will collapse." The mechanic nodded, eyes locked on the map. "It's a bold plan, but we don't have enough resources for a full-scale attack. We'll have to strike fast, hit hard, and disappear before they can regroup. And we'll be vulnerable," the hacker interjected. "Once we start, there's no turning back. We'll be under pursuit in minutes." The tension hung thick in the room as the group weighed their options. They had no backup. No reinforcements. It was just them, and their reliance on one another. The mother, who had remained quiet for much of the conversation, spoke up. "We can do this. We've made it this far. Every time we've been faced with impossible odds, we've found a way. We've proven that humanity's will is stronger than any army." Her words, though simple, carried weight. The group had come together despite their differences. They had weathered the storm. And now, with the knowledge they had gained, the stakes were higher than ever. They were ready to face the final challenge. As they made their way to their respective ships, the team couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of urgency that had taken over. The final assault was about to begin. They boarded their crafts, feeling the familiar weight of the controls in their hands, the quiet hum of the engines beneath them. For a moment, it almost felt like any other mission. But the reality was far different. This was not just any mission. This was the last stand. The alien fleet was massive, hundreds of ships, each a formidable force in its own right. The Resistance had only a handful of fighters, but they had one advantage, the element of surprise. The alien commanders were not expecting an attack. With the right strike, they could cripple the fleet and buy humanity the time they needed to regroup and push forward. As they moved into position, the tension became palpable. Everyone knew what was at stake. This wasn't just about survival, it was about preserving the future of humanity. "Ready?" the teacher's voice crackled through the comms, a steady force amidst the chaos. "Ready," the mechanic's voice came back, his tone sharp. "Weapons primed," the hacker added. "This is it." The ship slipped silently into the enemy fleet sector, avoiding detection as they closed in on the primary target, the alien mothership, the command center that controlled the entire operation. If they could destroy it, the alien forces would be thrown into disarray. The plan was set in motion. With a coordinated series of strikes, the team would disable the outer defenses of the mothership, giving them a brief window of opportunity to plant a devastating explosive device deep within its core. But as they drew closer, the unexpected happened. A sudden surge of energy burst through the alien fleet's defensive grid, and the entire system was alerted to their presence. The element of surprise was gone. "Damn it," the mechanic muttered. "We've been compromised." The once silent comms were now alive with chatter, the sounds of the Resistance fighters locking onto their targets and the enemy ships scrambling to retaliate. The battlefield erupted into chaos as the alien fleet turned on them, weapons blazing. The teacher's voice rang out through the comms. "Hold your ground. Don't let them surround you." The resistance fighters fought fiercely, their training and determination driving them forward. They had no choice but to keep pushing, even as the alien ships closed in on all sides. The hacker was busy scrambling their signals, trying to keep them from being tracked by the enemy fleet's advanced targeting systems. The mechanic worked tirelessly on the weapon systems, ensuring the team's ships could strike with maximum precision. But with every moment that passed, it became clearer that this mission wasn't going to go according to plan. The alien forces were regrouping, and their overwhelming numbers were starting to take their toll. And then, just as all hope seemed lost, the unexpected happened. Cyrus, the alien officer who had defected, appeared on the comms. "I'm in position. I can open the channel to their command center." The resistance team stared at the screens in disbelief. Cyrus had delivered on his promise, he was helping them from the inside. With his expertise, he had infiltrated the alien communication network, allowing them to bypass the mothership's defenses. The teacher didn't hesitate. "Now's our chance. Go." In a coordinated attack, the resistance fighters fired their weapons with precision, targeting key points in the alien fleet's defenses. The alien ships began to fall back, their lines disorganized as the resistance fighters moved in to strike directly at the mothership's core. It was a fierce battle, with explosions and debris filling the void of space. The sounds of combat crackled through the comms, but through it all, the resistance pressed on, their focus unshakable. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the moment came. The explosive device was set, and the countdown began. The alien mothership, the heart of the alien fleet, was about to be destroyed. 5 seconds, the teacher called out. "Everyone, get clear." The final blast echoed through space, and the mothership exploded in a brilliant flash of light. The shockwave spread across the battlefield, sending alien ships tumbling into chaos. The resistance had done it, they had struck the decisive blow. As the dust settled and the alien forces were left in disarray, the resistance fighters gathered together, their ships safely pulling away from the site of the destruction. They had won the battle, but the war was far from over. The aftermath of the final assault felt surreal. In the void of space, the once mighty alien mothership now drifted in pieces, its destruction signaling a monumental victory for humanity. But as the resistance fighters regrouped, the weight of the moment was not lost on them. They had won, but at what cost? The teacher stood on the command deck of their flagship, watching the aftermath unfold through the viewport. Her eyes were tired, but there was a glimmer of satisfaction in them. They had succeeded in what they had set out to do, but the consequences of their actions were just beginning to sink in. "We did it," the mechanic said, his voice soft but filled with disbelief. "We really did it." The hacker was still working furiously at his console, trying to monitor the alien fleet's remaining movements. "It's not over yet. We've crippled their command, but they're not going to just give up. We've bought humanity some time, but there's still a lot of work to do. And we'll do it," the teacher replied, turning from the viewport to face her team. "This isn't just about one victory. It's about what comes next. What we do now will define humanity's future." The gravity of her words hung in the air. The battle they had fought, and won, was just the beginning. The alien forces were not defeated, and the war was far from over. But something had shifted in the hearts of the resistance fighters. They were no longer just a ragtag group fighting for survival. They had become something greater, a symbol of humanity's resilience, its ability to adapt, to fight back, and to come together in the face of overwhelming odds. As the days passed, the news of their victory spread across Earth and beyond. The alien fleet, though still operational, was now in disarray. The destruction of their mothership had thrown their command structure into chaos, and their once unified forces were now struggling to regroup. The Resistance's victory had done more than just halt the alien advance, it had given humanity hope. Across the globe, people were beginning to stand together, inspired by the courage and tenacity of those who had fought in the final assault. Nations that had once been divided now found common cause. It wasn't just about survival anymore, it was about rebuilding, about reclaiming their place in the universe. The teacher walked through the crowded halls of their temporary base, taking in the sight of people working together, strategizing, and preparing for the next phase. The fear and uncertainty that had gripped the world only weeks before had been replaced by a sense of purpose and determination. She stopped for a moment, watching a group of children playing, their laughter echoing through the halls. It was a fleeting moment of peace, but it was enough. The future was uncertain, but for the first time in a long while, it felt possible. She turned as the mechanic approached, his face serious but calm. "We've got a new plan in place," he said. "It's not going to be easy, but we've got a chance to push them back even further. We've got allies now." The teacher nodded, a small smile tugging at her lips. Allies. The word still felt strange, but it was the truth. Cyrus, the alien officer who had defected and helped them strike the final blow, had opened the door to new possibilities. The Resistance had not only gained a valuable ally in the fight against the alien invaders, they had gained something more, a reminder that even those who were once enemies could change, could choose a different path. The teacher glanced around, her mind racing with possibilities. They had won this battle, but there was still so much more to do. The war wasn't over, but the Resistance had proven something fundamental, that humanity, united and resolute, could face the impossible and emerge victorious. "Let's make sure this victory counts," she said, her voice filled with conviction. "We've bought ourselves some time, but now we have to be ready for whatever comes next." The team gathered in the briefing room, their faces grim but determined. They had succeeded in crippling the alien fleet, but there was no time to rest on their laurels. The war was far from over, and they had to prepare for the next phase of the fight. The hacker leaned over his console, tracking the movements of the remaining alien forces. "They're still regrouping, but we've got a window. We need to act fast. We've got the knowledge we need now," the mechanic added. "We can use their tactics against them. We're not just surviving anymore, we're fighting to win." The mother stood near the back of the room, her eyes thoughtful. "We've seen what happens when we work together. We've seen what happens when we put everything on the line for each other. We can't let that go." Her words struck a chord with the group. They had faced impossible odds and come out on top. But it wasn't just their weapons or their tactics that had made them successful. It had been their unity, their willingness to sacrifice, and their determination to protect the future. The final moments of the story are reflective. As the team prepares for the next phase of the battle, they know that victory is no longer a matter of chance, it's a matter of will. Humanity had proven that it was stronger than any invading force, that its spirit could not be crushed, no matter how dire the situation. The story ends with a message of hope. In times of darkness, humanity's resilience and unity are its greatest weapons. Even when the odds are stacked against them, even when the enemy seems insurmountable, humanity has the power to fight back and rise above.